Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm a little later than I usually am because that's just how today went. But also, I'll be starting teaching on Monday mornings soon. So I was just thinking, let's just try a later time, see how that works for everybody, see whether more people show up or less people or whatever. But I'll be teaching on Monday mornings come, not next week, but the week after. So I'll have to try a different time anyway. So what I want to talk to you about today is something that's been coming up quite a bit in my conversation. It came up in the conversation I had with Brenda Stevenson last Friday, and if you got that, I was live. We did a joint live on her in her Facebook group. If you didn't catch that, I can probably post a link in the comments. We talked about, so the topic was from wishing to writing. So we talked a lot about how to write. If you hear any noise in the background, one of our cats is in a mood and she's throwing everything she can off my desk. So if you hear a sound, that's her. And now she's playing with something on the floor. Okay. Let that not disturb us. It will disturb me. I cannot believe, like, she's always doing stuff like this. Okay, but I love her. I love her to pieces. Anyway, I'm not here to spread my love for cats. So with Brandes, it came up, and I'll post a link. So we talked about from wishing to writing, like how do writers, like what is blocking people from writing? What is blocking people from getting in the chair? And what blocks them, like when they see the white page with that blinking cursor, what keeps them from writing the words down? And it's also a topic that I talked about, like when I talk about my upcoming writing program, it's something that keeps coming up, and I try to explain to people why I start my writing program, keeps coming up, but it also keeps coming up in the worksheets that I receive back from people that enrolled in my writing program. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that today. So the question actually I want to discuss is, are you allowed to write what you need or want to write? So I want to talk about the allowing part. Like, do you allow yourself to be creative? Do you allow yourself to be a writer? And this is a very layered question, and it has a layered answer as well. So what I want to do today is start by sharing at least 3 questions you can ask yourself to start unraveling that a little bit. Because there are different aspects to that particular question. I would say that for everyone's personal circumstances, how these particular aspects are related and how they influence your life and how and not just your life, but your writing practice. I think the way they are related is very personal, and you need to understand how it is related before you're able to tackle it. So first question would be, is this your story to share? So of course I'm talking about memoirs, I'm talking personal blogs. A lot of people who write personal stories have this sort of threshold they need to like cross, this bridge they have to cross before they allow themselves to voice a story from their perspective. So maybe this is something that is bothering you as well. Is something keeping you back, or you're like thinking, okay, if I write this story, even though I know it is my story, if I write this story down, what will my environment say? What will the people who were involved in this say? Will they understand that this is just my perspective of the story? And of course, this doesn't only relate to memoirs and personal blogs and what have you. It also, like I would say that for a lot of people, like when you write fiction, whether you know it or not, whether you're conscious of it or not, there will be something of yourself in your book. There's a lot of people put their political views in the book. They put things that happen to them. They change the book or they fictionalize it. But still, it could be something that keeps you back. Like if you know or if you don't know, especially I think if you're unconscious of it, that you're afraid that stuff seeps in from your personal life that people might pick up on and might have an opinion about that you know well and that you want validation from. That could really keep you from sitting down and writing the story that you want to write. So this is the first question, like, is this your story to write? And I would always say yes, like if it's from your perspective, it's always your story to write. But is that something that's keeping you back? And if so, what is keeping you back? Who is keeping you back? Who are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? What backlash are you afraid of? So second question is it the genre you're allowed to write in? And for me, and I also talked about this with Brandes, is I have a very academic background. So I I was brought up with the idea that don't be a writer because you cannot make money as a writer. And of course, there's a huge debate going on about that right now, especially with self-publishing coming up. But no one told me, pick a career and then write like for fun. No, it was just like you don't write because, it's not useful. So you don't do it. It's not a worthwhile hobby because, you won't ever make money of it. So what I did, like, as I said, like I have this academic background. So what happened to me is that I stopped writing. Well, I didn't stop writing, but I wrote secretly, like in summer holidays and Christmas holidays. Like I locked myself up and I wrote wrote like thousands of words, and nobody knew what I was doing there, in my room, behind my computer. Nobody knew. So that is one thing. Are you allowed to write in terms of, like, can you like? Are you allowing yourself to write? And then of course there's the what do you want to write? That was actually my third point. Maybe I should do that first. So there is this thing like if it's not useful, like if writing, if you were brought up with the idea that writing is like not a worthwhile hobby because you can't really monetize it, which of course like we're questioning right now because we live in a completely different era right now. So the third question would be, and then I'll go back to the second question because as I said, like it's a layered question and all these things, as you see, are related to each other. So maybe it's also a bit difficult to keep them apart. So my third question that I wrote down was, are you allowed to set time apart each day to devote to your writing? Or are you too caught up like in what it means to be a good parent or a good partner? For me, it would be like a good daughter. Like, am I like doing the right? Like, am I doing right by my parents? But also, like, the same would be like, maybe you're taking care of one of your parents, or maybe you're taking care of a sibling. So, are you allowing yourself time to write, or are you too caught up in like, am I being a good enough person? Am I taking care enough of the people around me that need me? Or am I worthy of my time alone? So that would be my third question. And I think that's a struggle for a lot of people, especially if you have kids. I would say, I know a lot of my clients are mothers, who are really fighting that. Like, I want to be a good mother, so I feel, and of course that's very cultural. Like what good motherhood is very cultural. So if you live in a culture where there's this discourse that you have to be available for your children 24/7, and you also have to be available for your partner, it becomes really difficult to set time apart for your writing. So that's a question you definitely have to look into. Like, are you allowed? Are you by yourself or by the people in your environment? What happens if you take your computer, sit down in a room with a door that can close, and just see what happens? And then you'll see if you're the one not allowing yourself to write because you have all these ideas in your head, what makes a good parent, what makes a good partner. And if there's constant knocking at your door and you're constantly disturbed, then okay, it's not just me. My environment is also not allowing me to write. So perhaps then it's time to have that conversation with them. Like, what do they expect of you? And is it reasonable to expect that of a human being with aspirations, and who needs like writing to feed their souls? So back to the second question, which is now my third question, and that relates to my academic background. So the reason. I think one of the reasons I went in, like I did my bachelor in English literature. What I did is for a long time I wrote about literature. So literature with a capital L, actually the literary genre. That's what I wrote about. So I couldn't write because that was not worthwhile, and I could never write like that. That's the idea. Like, don't even bother, don't even try. You're never going to be someone as big as this person or whatever. Like Jane Austen, for example. I mean, that's a very, like, when you do English literature, Jane Austen comes up. So the question for you is then, is it the genre you're allowed to write in? Because with this academic background, like this whole highbrow, lowbrow distinction. So for me, it was very difficult. If you wanted to study anything but literature, capital L stuff, you really had to argue why you were allowed to research that. so within that world, of course, literature was always like valued higher than like genre fiction. And it took me forever and ever. And now I can say it without feeling embarrassed, but I write young adult fantasy fiction. And it took me years before I was able to say that. Because saying that you write is one thing, like telling people you write is one thing, but telling them you're writing in a genre that is not as valued as Man Booker Prize stuff, you know, all the traditional publishing, and of course, like a lot of young adult fantasy fiction is traditionally published. It's very popular, which is of course due to like the whole J.K. Rowling Harry Potter. She really helped us there, so it became more respectable, I would say. But the other thing I co-write with a friend is romance, for example. It's another one of those. It's $1 billion industry, but most people, like, we have a pen name because we write together, and because we both write our own stuff, and it's a completely different genre. So you don't want to confuse your reader. So then you pick a pen name. But there are a lot of people who have a pen name for their romance just because it's not valued as highly as literary fiction. So when you think about what you're writing, are you allowed to write this particular genre? Or is it one of those, genres that is sort of looked down upon within, for example, the more literary circles? That's another question, and it's part of that. So to sum up, if you find it difficult to allow yourself, to sit down and write, start with these 3 questions. Is it your story to share? And if it is, but you're still not writing, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid? Who are you afraid of? Like, what will they say? What do you think they're going to say? And did they actually say it, or is this all in your head? And maybe, like, if it's really something, if you really want to write a memoir, maybe you can talk to the people involved, see what they have to say. And otherwise, it's your story, so just do it. I know that's very easy to say, but think about this one. And then, so the question is, is it the genre you're allowed to write in? Or are you from a particular environment in which particular genres are valued higher than others? So is that a reason why you keep yourself from writing? And the other question would be, are you allowed to set time apart for yourself and actually write? Is it something that you're allowed to do in your day-to-day existence? So think about that. When you think about, why am I not writing? Am I allowing myself to write? Start here and see how these different answers, how they connect for you personally. And see what the answers you come up with, like what they do to you. Does it shift anything for you? I mean, I hope so. And let me know. You don't have to put it in the comments if that's very personal. You can always send me a private message and we can talk about this. So yeah, this is what I wanted to share with you today. And I hope that's useful. Okay. Have a good... For me, it's almost like I'm preparing dinner. I'm going to prepare dinner. But for those in the US and elsewhere in that part of the world, have a good day. And the other ones, have a good night. Bye-bye.